we think there is.
Not so fast.
And there's apparently a lot to back up their reason for knocking on Terry's door and taking him into custody. And then, you know, for Chauncey Billups, it appears he's not involved in any gambling issues related to the NBA or any game action or anything like that, which is a relief. Can you imagine a head coach involved in that sort of thing?
Dude,
but you're happy.
The FBI just dropped a bombshell that could destroy everything LeBron James has built. A $200 million fraud claim, not a rumor, not speculation, an actual federal investigation that's threatening to unravel the King's entire empire. For years, LeBron's been untouchable, the face of the NBA, a billionaire mogul, a cultural icon. But behind the endorsements, the championships, and the carefully crafted public image, there's a financial scandal so massive it's making investigators question everything. His legacy, his fortune, his reputation, all of it could vanish overnight. And the worst part? The details they're uncovering are way darker than anyone imagined. This isn't just about money. This is about trust, betrayal, and the ugly truth hiding behind one of sport's biggest empires. So what really happened, and how did the king of the NBA end up in the crosshairs of federal agents?
I think in my environment, we weren't allowed to be vulnerable, right? And so I had to learn that through emotion, right? And so it's kind of like wavelengths of humans, right? I can stand next to you and I can feel that wave.
Let's rewind. Because to understand how we got here, you need to understand what LeBron James built. This isn't just a basketball player we're talking about. This is a business empire, a billion-dollar brand, a media conglomerate, a man who transcended sports to become a global icon. LeBron came from nothing, Akron, Ohio, a single mother, poverty, the kind of story that makes people believe in the American dream. And he didn't just make it to the NBA, he conquered it. 4 championships, 4 MVPs, all-time leading scorer. The kid from Akron became King James, and everyone wanted a piece of that crown. But LeBron was smart. He didn't just play ball, he became a mogul. Media companies, production deals, investment portfolios that stretched from tech startups to real estate empires. He preached control, ownership, building generational wealth. More than an athlete wasn't just a slogan, it was a business philosophy. And the numbers? They were staggering. By 2024, LeBron's net worth was estimated at over $1 billion. Endorsement deals with major brands, a media company producing content for streaming platforms, investment stakes in businesses you didn't even know existed. To the public, LeBron was the perfect success story. Philanthropist opening schools, role model preaching education and empowerment, the guy who did everything right both on and off the court. His image was bulletproof, untouchable, beyond reproach. But here's the thing about empires built on image. Sometimes the foundation is shakier than it appears. And in LeBron's case, financial experts were starting to notice cracks that didn't make sense. Whispers in high-level investment circles, quiet conversations among financial analysts who dealt with celebrity wealth. Something about LeBron's numbers seemed off. Asset valuations that appeared inflated, investment returns that looked too good to be true, revenue projections from business ventures that didn't quite match reality. Nobody said anything publicly. You don't accuse LeBron James of financial impropriety without serious evidence, but the whispers were there, and someone was listening.
40 years old now.
Yes, sir.
You've been in the league 22 years, longer than you were not in the league. You're in the league.
Right.
And you're playing like you're one of the best seasons you've ever had.
Yeah.
Why is that, you think? Is it comfort? Is it what is it about this year?
I mean, I think obviously I've been in the game for a while, so I kind of know what to expect. And, obviously, one, you got to take care of your body, but more importantly, you got to take care of your mind. Being a professional athlete, if your mind is not as as sharp as possible or as clear as possible, then you're not going to be able to perform at a high level. I think, seeing what our
Early 2025. That's when things started unraveling. Federal investigators conducting routine audits on high net worth individuals flagged unusual activity in several of LeBron's business entities. Not the basketball contracts. Those were clean, transparent, documented. But the business side? That's where the red flags appeared. Multiple financial transactions that didn't align with reported valuations. Investment portfolios showing returns that seemed mathematically improbable. Assets listed at values significantly higher than independent appraisals suggested they were worth. And here's the kicker. These weren't small discrepancies. We're talking tens of millions of dollars in overstatements. Then came the anonymous tips. Former business associates reaching out to federal authorities with concerns about financial reporting practices within LeBron's organization. People who'd worked inside the machine and seen things that made them uncomfortable. They weren't accusing LeBron directly, at least not at first, but they were appointing investigators toward documents, deals, and financial statements that needed a closer look. The pattern became clear pretty quickly. For years, LeBron's team had been reporting asset valuations and business revenues to financial institutions, tax authorities, and potential investors. Those valuations determined everything: loan capabilities, tax obligations, investment opportunities, even that billion-dollar net worth status everyone celebrated. But when federal auditors started comparing those reported numbers to actual market values and verifiable revenue streams, the gap was massive. We're not talking about minor accounting differences. This was a $200 million discrepancy. $200 million in overvalued assets, inflated revenue projections, and financial statements that didn't match reality, the kind of gap that triggers federal fraud investigations. And suddenly, LeBron's team went radio silent. No press conferences, no social media posts about the allegations, no public statements defending the numbers, just lawyers. Lots of lawyers. And that silence? It spoke volumes. Because when you're innocent, you defend yourself. When you're guilty, you lawyer up and hope the storm passes. But this storm was just getting started.
So we really have to believe it, and I talk about it every day, and then other people started talking about it every day in the company, and then it doesn't just become something we say, it becomes something we live, and it's reflective of the choices we make, the content we make, and how we bring our brands and IP to life, and it's now cut across everything we do.
Now let's dig in a little bit on Spring Hill Entertainment. You're about to have your first big blockbuster tentpole come out in Space Jam, which my kids are very excited to see. LeBron is the star.
By March 2025, this wasn't just an audit anymore. The FBI officially launched a criminal investigation into LeBron James' business empire. And when the FBI gets involved, that's when you know it's serious. Federal subpoenas were issued to multiple business entities connected to LeBron, his media company, his investment firms, his financial advisors. Even personal bank accounts were under scrutiny. Investigators wanted everything: tax returns, financial statements, investment documents, email correspondence, text messages, every piece of paper, every digital transaction, every conversation about money. The allegations? Fraudulent financial reporting designed to artificially inflate LeBron's net worth and secure favorable terms with financial institutions. In simpler terms, lying about how much everything was worth to get better loans, pay lower taxes, and maintain that billionaire status that opened so many doors. Here's how it allegedly worked. LeBron's team would take a business venture, let's say a media production deal or an investment stake in a startup, and assign it a valuation, not based on what independent appraisers said it was worth, not based on actual revenue or realistic growth projections, but based on what they wanted it to be worth. Then they'd report that inflated number to banks, tax authorities, and potential business partners. The banks would see those numbers and think, wow, LeBron's empire is worth way more than we thought. Here's a better loan rate. Tax authorities would calculate obligations based on those reported values. Business partners would invest based on those projections. everyone was making decisions based on numbers that weren't real. And the scale of it? $200 million. That's not a rounding error. That's not creative accounting. That's systematic fraud, according to federal investigators. But wait, because what investigators found next makes the $200 million look like just the beginning. Tax evasion charges were now on the table. Federal prosecutors were examining whether LeBron's organization deliberately underreported income and overvalued deductions to avoid paying millions in taxes. We're talking potential criminal charges, prison time, the complete destruction of everything LeBron built. Insider sources started leaking details to the media. Anonymous quotes from people close to the investigation describing panic mode inside LeBron's inner circle. Emergency meetings with lawyers, frantic calls to financial advisors, attempts to revise previous financial statements, the kind of chaos that happens when an empire realizes it's about to collapse. And through it all, LeBron himself remained invisible. No public appearances, no statements, no explanations, just silence. And that silence was deafening. The business world moves fast when the FBI comes knocking. And for LeBron, the fallout was immediate and devastating. Major sponsors started quietly distancing themselves, not canceling contracts outright. Nobody wants the backlash of abandoning LeBron without due process. But conversations were happening behind closed doors, meetings about restructuring partnerships, legal teams reviewing morality clauses, the kind of corporate language that means we're getting ready to cut ties if this gets worse. Business partners in various investment ventures suddenly became very concerned about their association with LeBron's financial empire. Investors started asking uncomfortable questions. How much of our portfolio is connected to these allegedly fraudulent valuations? What's our legal exposure here? Should we be talking to our own lawyers? Social media absolutely erupted. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, every platform was flooded with reactions. The LeBron defenders came out hard. This is a witch hunt. They're targeting a successful black businessman. Where's the proof? Innocent until proven guilty. Fair points, honestly. But the critics were just as loud. The king is a fraud, built his empire on lies, always knew something was off about those numbers. This is why you can't trust celebrity billionaires. The divide was intense, and it was getting uglier by the day. Former teammates and NBA players found themselves in awkward positions, reporters asking them to comment on federal fraud investigations against one of the greatest players in history. Most stayed neutral. I don't know the details. That's between LeBron and the authorities. I'm focused on basketball. Smart responses, safe responses. But fans? Fans were torn apart. LeBron's been a hero to millions. Kids who grew up watching him dominate the court, adults who respected his business acumen and philanthropy, communities that benefited from his charitable work. How do you reconcile that with federal fraud allegations? Some refuse to believe it. Not LeBron, he's too smart for this. He's too careful. Others felt betrayed. We defended this man for years. We believed in him, and this is what he was doing behind the scenes? The emotional investment people had in LeBron's image made this scandal even more painful. And still, silence from LeBron's camp. No press conferences, no Instagram posts proclaiming innocence, no carefully crafted PR statements, just lawyers filing motions and requesting extensions. The media blackout was fueling even more speculation, because when you're fighting fraud charges, silence looks like guilt. As weeks passed, more details leaked from the federal investigation, and the picture that emerged was worse than anyone initially thought. The alleged fraud scheme was sophisticated. This wasn't some sloppy accounting mistake. According to investigators, this was a coordinated effort involving multiple people in LeBron's organization to systematically overvalue assets across his entire business portfolio. Here's how it allegedly worked. LeBron's media company, valued internally at numbers significantly higher than any independent media analyst would support. Investment stakes in various startups reported at projected future values rather than current market reality. Real estate holdings, appraised using optimistic assumptions that didn't match comparable property sales. Each overvaluation might seem defensible in isolation. Business valuations involve projections and estimates after all. But when you stack them all together across dozens of assets and business ventures, the cumulative effect was a net worth calculation that was allegedly off by $200 million. That's not estimation error, that's fraud. Financial advisors and business managers were under intense scrutiny. Who authorized these valuations? Who signed off on the financial statements? Who knew the numbers were inflated? The FBI was building a case, and that case required proving intent. Did LeBron personally know these valuations were fraudulent, or was he trusting advisors who were cooking the books without his knowledge? That question became crucial, because if LeBron was directly involved in creating these fraudulent financial statements, he's facing serious criminal exposure. But if his advisors were acting independently and misleading him about the true state of his finances, that's a different story. Still devastating to his reputation and his wallet, but potentially not criminal for LeBron himself. Anonymous sources claimed federal investigators had email communications suggesting LeBron was more involved than his lawyers wanted to admit. Conversations about maximizing valuation presentations, discussions about optimal positioning for financial institutions, language that could be interpreted as knowing participation in the fraud scheme. But here's where it gets really complicated. Even if prosecutors could prove the financial statements were fraudulent, proving LeBron personally intended to defraud banks and tax authorities is a much higher bar. White-collar crime cases are notoriously difficult to prosecute, especially against defendants with resources to hire the best legal teams in the country. LeBron's legal exposure was real, though. Civil penalties in the hundreds of millions, potential criminal charges if prosecutors felt they could prove intent, complete destruction of his business reputation, loss of endorsements and partnerships, and that billionaire status? Gone. Because when you strip away $200 million in inflated valuations, suddenly you're not a billionaire anymore. You're just a very rich athlete with a tarnished legacy. The tax implications alone were staggering. If the IRS determined that LeBron's organization deliberately undervalued income and overvalued deductions based on these fraudulent financial statements, we're talking potential back taxes plus penalties that could reach into 9 figures. This wasn't just about reputation anymore. This was about LeBron's entire financial future. Everything he built, everything he claimed to represent, all of it hanging in the balance while federal investigators sifted through years of financial documents, looking for evidence of fraud. So let's talk about what this really means, because this isn't just a legal problem or a financial scandal. This is about legacy. And for someone like LeBron James, legacy is everything. 4 NBA championships, 4 MVP awards, all-time leading scorer, first ballot Hall of Famer. Those accomplishments can't be taken away. LeBron's basketball legacy is secure no matter what happens with this investigation. But that's not the legacy he spent 2 decades building, is it? LeBron wanted to be more than a basketball player. He wanted to be a business mogul, a media titan, a philanthropist, a role model who proved that athletes could build empires and create generational wealth. That's the legacy that's now in ruins. Because even if LeBron never faces criminal charges, even if the investigation concludes with civil penalties and financial restructuring rather than prison time, the damage is done. The image is shattered. That carefully crafted persona of the smart businessman who did everything right? Gone, replaced by questions and doubts and suspicions that will follow him forever. Compare this to other athlete financial scandals: Allen Iverson's bankruptcy, Mike Tyson's financial collapse, Vince Young losing everything. But those were stories of poor management and excessive spending, sympathetic narratives about athletes being taken advantage of by bad advisors. This is different. These are allegations of systematic fraud to maintain a false image of wealth and success. The more than an athlete brand that LeBron built his empire on, that brand is now associated with federal investigations and fraud allegations. Every business deal, every endorsement, every public statement about financial empowerment and ownership, it all gets re-examined through this lens. Were you actually that smart, or were you just lying about the numbers? Could LeBron face prison time? It's possible, though unlikely. White-collar criminals with resources and first-time offenses rarely see jail cells, but massive fines, civil penalties, loss of business opportunities? Absolute certainty. The financial empire collapses even if the man stays free. And what about that billion-dollar net worth? If you strip away the inflated valuations, if you account for legal fees and potential penalties, if sponsors walk away and business deals evaporate, LeBron's fortune takes a massive hit. Maybe not bankruptcy in the traditional sense, but definitely not the billionaire mogul status he's been claiming. The Hall of Fame won't reject him. His jersey numbers won't be unretired. Basketball fans will still debate whether he's better than Jordan. But every conversation about LeBron James will now include this chapter: the federal fraud investigation, the $200 million discrepancy, the empire built on inflated numbers. Future generations won't just remember LeBron as the king. They'll remember him as the king who allegedly defrauded financial institutions and tax authorities to maintain a false image of wealth. That's the lasting damage. That's the legacy cost. And here's the brutal truth. This investigation is far from over. Federal cases move slowly. Depositions, document reviews, forensic accounting, witness testimonies. This could drag on for years. Every few months, new revelations, new leaks, new humiliations. LeBron's final years in basketball overshadowed by courtroom drama and financial scandals. What happens next? More subpoenas, more investigations, possible indictments if prosecutors feel they have enough evidence, civil lawsuits from business partners who feel defrauded, IRS audits going back years, and through it all, LeBron trying to salvage whatever remains of his reputation and his fortune. The king built an empire, but empires built on false foundations don't survive scrutiny. And when the FBI comes knocking with fraud allegations involving $200 million, that empire crumbles fast. But here's the question nobody's asking yet. If LeBron's financial statements were this inflated, what else was exaggerated? His reported charitable donations? His investment success stories? How deep does this deception go? And more importantly, how many other athletes are playing the same game with their finances, just hoping they never get caught? The fall of LeBron James' business empire is a reminder that image and reality are two very different things. For years, we celebrated the king's success without questioning the numbers behind it. We believed the billion-dollar valuation because we wanted to believe it, because it fit the narrative of the athlete who transcended sports and built something bigger. But when federal investigators start pulling back the curtain, when forensic accountants start examining the actual numbers, sometimes the empire is exposed as an illusion. And that's what we're witnessing now. Not just a fraud investigation, the destruction of a carefully crafted myth. LeBron's basketball legacy is secure, his place in NBA history is untouchable, but his business mogul legacy, as a financial success story, as more than an athlete, that's bankrupt, and no amount of championships can rebuild it.